Cheney's reputation, even while Ed Bradley was going there, did not reach above gossip in the black neighborhood, the projects, that you only needed an 80 IQ to get in. But when Ed Bradley stood amongst those white people, I witnessed Ed Bradley saying to those white people, when I was at Cheney, and then he would quote some professor of his who told him to continue to go on and strive, and I kept looking at Ed. And Ed became bigger than just Ed. Because you see, Ed had a pride in Cheney. Ed had, through his black professors, learned and accepted their wisdom, their push, their respect for him, and making him respect himself. Those black people, those professors who saw more in Ed than he saw in himself. Oddly, Ed Bradley was not aiming towards journalism. Ed was aiming at becoming a school teacher. Mathematics. It wasn't long before the very people that Ed wanted to save helped him to make another choice in careers. Because teaching math is difficult when you're looking at people who say, why we got to know this. I don't know how many teachers are out here. I too was studying to become a teacher. And my reason for becoming a teacher was because I wanted to find me in those boys. I didn't know anything about girls. I just wanted to find me in those boys who were willing to throw away the education. I'm talking about 1960. But I already had the idea the day I joined the Navy at age 19. And the man woke us up at 04:30. And he put his face to mine after banging on my bunk, because this was my first night being out. My mother played the game with me. 3 times, you got 3 visits. First time, it's time to get up. All right, Ma. And you go back to sleep. Second time, you hear her coming, you put one leg out. And you show it to her. You say, I got the leg out. And I always slept with socks on to show her that I was getting dressed. And then the third time, she said, what did I say? And I was sitting up. All right, this man did not know that game. The man banged on my cot, or whatever I was sleeping in, bunk, with a stick, yelling and screaming. And I just thought, this is the rudest person. And then this white man put his face near mine with a cigarette hanging on and said to me, I am not your mother. I did not punch him. I did not touch him because I did not want to go to jail. I had good sense. I'm not going to the brig. But that was the day that I met Jesus. No, I didn't sing any songs and I didn't see Jesus. But I just started to think, what would Jesus do? And I said to him, I'm praying for you. And he coughed, turned around and left. But it was that day, ladies and gentlemen, that I realized, you know what? And I began to hear all of the voices of these old people, whether they were winos or not, telling me how bright I am. And my self-esteem, coupled with the father that wasn't a man who wanted responsibility, coupled with wanting and sadness of being broke. Children know when you're broke, and they don't like it. And you can say and be as nice as you want, well, we're kind of short right now. That means nothing. It means you're broke. It means you're not a good parent. You have no money. And why don't you have money? That's what we say. And ladies and gentlemen, you can be a man like my father who would come and go and come and go, or you could be like Barack's father and not come. It's still a form of abandonment to have your father drunk take you someplace. Now, Anna P. Cosby did not ever put a piece of dirty clothing on her children. Even if they only had one piece of clothing, she washed it, dried it in the oven sometimes. The only thing that marred any piece of clothing we ever wore was when she put the starch in something and the iron was too hot and you had a brown spot. It's the only time. But we wore white socks, everything. In our homes, there's a picture that was copied. My father had taken by some photographer. It is a picture of my brother James. By the way, he died when he was 7 and I was 8. But my brother James and I holding hands in these white suits, short pants. And behind, in the background, is a bottle of Early Times. And I always tell people my father's 3 favorite things, but he loved the one in the back the most. No, I've seen them carry my father out of the theater when he'd taken us to the movie and passed out. And I saw them pour water on his face as he lay on the sidewalk. And I heard, and I still remember voices saying, "That's such a shame," as James and I stood there not understanding what had happened to our father. I witnessed this man beat physically this 4'11" woman weighing 108 pounds, and he at 5'11", 230 pounds. I witnessed, and I was too little to do anything, scared to death. And I became frightened after that every time they raised their voices. And this too was in me, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it was in me. I didn't know that the beatings stayed in me, pushing me lower and lower in my self-esteem. He had 2 brothers, one still alive. One graduated from Westchester College. In the 10th grade, he went to his counselor and he said to his counselor, "This school does not have what I want." 10th grade public high school. And they said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to study voice." And they put him on the trolley car and sent him out to Westchester. It's 1938. And he passed the oral exam. there was nothing written. And then he sang and did some things, and he graduated in 4 years, president of the chess club, played the trombone in the band. Got a scholarship to the leading musical, Juilliard, which at the time only gave out degrees of masters. He earned his master's at Juilliard in voice. But while he was there, Juilliard had been accredited to give out the BS. And so since he was a fellow, he took that and graduated. So he had 2 BS's and 1 master's. And then he went across the street to Columbia University and earned his master's in music and voice. And he taught until he could no longer remember who he was and what he was supposed to do, but he knew he wanted to go somewhere. And sometimes they'd find him at the bus stop, just sitting there forgetting where he's supposed to go. The other brother graduated and went on to become an engineer. These 2 brothers never once, knowing that their brother was a man who did not believe in supporting his family monetarily, who did not do kind things to and with his wife, drank, and when he did work, there were arguments about what happened to the money, and then fights. And we stayed in the housing project, where he so casually said, whenever he came to visit, I don't want responsibility. And he brought in friends that drank. The only good thing about it was in those days, this was before AA, I think, drunks were funny people. So my brothers and I, we would go someplace and listen to these drunken people and laugh at them. My 2 uncles, by the way, never once set foot in our apartment or our house. Never once do I remember one uncle saying, if you study, you can be anything. None of that. And so it just wasn't there.
Do you know who we are? PCCEO, helping people, changing lives for every stage of life.
I took a trip to Elkhart, Indiana today. Elkhart's a place that has lost jobs faster than anywhere else in America. In fact, local TV stations have started running public service announcements that tell people where to find food banks, even as the food banks don't have enough to meet the demand.